Dragi slušatelji, pozdrav. Dragi slušatelji, pozdrav svima. Nadam se da uživate u sunčanim i dužim danima koji su pred nama. Dobrodošli u Ideal razgovore. Moj današnji gost je Jean-Paul Van De Walle, odvjetnik iz Belgije, a ja sam Branka Martinović. Razgovarat ćemo o zanimljivim temama, stoga ostanite s nama. Razgovor je vođen na engleskom, a potrudit ću se dodati hrvatski prijevod. Slobodno ga podijelite s onima koji bi moglo zanimati. Hello, bonjour, hello, Bog Jean-Paul. Thank you very much for your time.
Hi, Branka. It's a pleasure to be here with you. And I think this podcast is a great initiative.
Oh, thank you very much. So, Jean-Paul, you're a lawyer from Belgium. You live and work in Brussels. Prior to your present job position in ADF International, you worked in a law firm where you managed lawsuits in Belgian torts law, insurance law, and contract law. Tell us about your life path from birth through education to the current position in the ADF International. You can bring us closer to your professional side, but feel free to share with us what you want from your personal life as well.
Okay, thank you very much for this question, which immediately brings me to a challenge, right? Because I'm currently 35 years old, and you're asking me to kind of summarize that in a couple of minutes, which is not easy, but I'm very glad to do it. What I will do is maybe just, as I reflect on your question, I'll just describe a couple of highlights which may be of interest for you, or just points of interest of those 35 years. And I would start by saying that probably what is most important for me to mention here is that I'm Christian. I'm Catholic, and I've always received a Christian and Catholic education. Clearly this shaped my personality, and it also shaped my field of interest. Alongside with that is also the fact that I think I've always had kind of an interest in issues related to society as a whole. How do you manage society? How is society ruled? Kind of not being indifferent for issues that can be encountered in society. So that being said, I must say that I've always loved science, more hard science, which would be physics or biology, or chemistry in particular. So basically nothing was leading me to once become a lawyer and choose law as a career. But while studying chemistry and biology, again, that concern I had for the society, for the broader society, always came back to mind. So at some point I thought maybe I should study philosophy. You know, philosophy is a discipline, probably you're familiar with it, Branka, which allows you to broaden your point of view, to ask a lot of questions. The relationship between man and society, the relationship between societies, how to perceive man and mankind. I mean, those kind of questions, right? Which in essence are maybe not scientific in the sense of positive exact science like chemistry and biology.
Yes.
So I was somewhere in the middle of that, and I would never have predicted that this process, like being in the middle between loving science and loving philosophy, would once bring me to study law and to become a lawyer. But now that I think of it, actually a career in law was not that, I would say, inappropriate for the kind of questioning I had. Because as a lawyer, on the one hand, you try to find very rational and structured solutions, which then become legal provisions, right? On the one hand, which is kind of a very scientific approach to society and societal problems. But on the other hand, as a lawyer, you're also motivated by the sense of justice. And justice is a philosophical virtue. And so a good lawyer actually needs to be able, in my humble view, to combine both perspectives, try to serve society. And that's kind of what motivated me to in the end study law school. And I did so with an interest in science and philosophy, but also as a Christian, with a desire to see how I could serve, how I could help society. And of course, it started just for me at the Brussels bar. Indeed, as you've mentioned, practicing torts and liability insurance contract law, which brought me from very, one could say, simple and straightforward lawsuits in traffic law in the beginning of my career towards more lauded and more important cases. For instance, you may be aware, you probably are aware that in March 2016, terrorist attack happened in the heart of Brussels.
Yeah.
And I had the privilege of as a lawyer, interacting with people who had been victims of those terrorism attacks. Those, of course, were very difficult conversations, difficult trials to handle, difficult cases, but they really allowed me to become a lawyer, I would say, that tried very humbly to serve society and my neighbor throughout the work I did.
Mm-hmm. So, move to the IDF International, it wasn't a surprise. Then it was just maybe a logical step for your life, for your career.
Well, in a certain way, what you say is true. It was somehow a surprise because I didn't really know. I didn't really know that there would be an open position at IDF International. I didn't really know where exactly I would land. But it is true that although I loved my work as a litigation lawyer in business law, although I loved it a lot, I had somehow a concern about other matters. Again, I come back to what I have said to how society evolves as a whole, and indeed that quite logically brought me in touch with organizations like ADF International, who also have that concern about where is this society heading, and who have that concern also as Christians. What are we doing with our fundamental freedoms, with the human rights? Where is society going? And as I was discerning what my future career could look like, I have also been praying, asking God to somehow show me maybe a path where I could use the few talents I received from Him to serve Him, to serve His work, to try to build a just society, not only for victims of traffic law incidents, not only for victims of terrorism, but also maybe in the wider perspective for society as a whole. That's how, in the end, indeed, you said logically, it's still a surprise, but I agree there is some kind of continuation to between how I started becoming a lawyer in business law and my current position at Alliance Defending Freedom International.
Maybe it was a God finger. We in Croatia say that God's finger has impact in our life. So maybe that.
Well, maybe. What is certain is that at least from the moment I started this position, I thought that God, what I had to do is to try to serve God through the work I did, and that's very humbly what I tried to do.
Yeah. So ADF International is a faith-based legal advocacy organization that protects fundamental freedoms and promotes the inherent dignity of all people. So can you please explain us in a simple way what ADF International does?
Yes, of course. I'm glad to do so. ADF International is indeed a faith-based legal advocacy organization. Now, what does that mean, being a legal advocacy organization? In practice, there are two things which I do on a daily basis, I would say. And I speak of myself, but I could speak of my colleagues worldwide, right? On the one hand, we try to be present at the heart of the international institutions where laws are drafted or policies are decided which impact our human rights or our fundamental freedoms. So on the one hand, we try to be present there, let's say before that a law or a policy is put in place, in order to try to monitor what is going on, to try to provide advice, and also to make sure that what is decided, if possible, goes in the sense of promoting the fundamental freedoms and the human rights, in particular also promoting the inherent human dignity of every human being. So on the one hand, we are present, I would say, where the law is made, right? On the other hand, that's the other part of our mission as Alliance Defending Freedom International. As lawyers, we try to be present also in courts and tribunals. So that is when the law has been decided and when it is put in practice. Inevitably, situations may arise where people's fundamental rights, fundamental freedoms are in jeopardy or have been violated. Yeah. So those people are rightly seeking justice before courts and tribunals. Well, as lawyers and as a Christian organization, we try to be present there to either to represent the people, which would then be, or they would then be our clients, or to support a legal team to provide various, to support in various ways, legal team or the client, or through communicating the case. And there's a reason why we are present at the international institutions or at international courts and tribunals or national courts and tribunals. That's because what is decided at the international level or what is decided in a courthouse in general has an impact not only for a specific case, but also a value of precedent for many countries. The example I could give is here in Europe, if the European Court of Human Rights decides something, has a decision, for instance, about the missionary work in Russia, as it recently had, the decision not only has an impact and an authority for Russia, which would then be the concerned states, but also for all the states that are part of the Council of Europe that fall in the jurisdiction of the court. So those are basically the two things we do on a daily basis. Being present at the international institutions where laws and policies are decided, and being present in the courts and tribunals where laws are applied or where victims of breaches of fundamental freedoms and human dignity, human rights seek justice. And the objective of our organization as Christians is always to strive towards a society whereby the doors of the society would be kept open for the message of the gospel to be heard and to be lived out in society.
ADF International is known for media campaigns based on your cases. Which case do you want to present to us today? Or maybe which one is your favorite? What are you currently working on?
Well, thank you for this question, because it will allow me to talk about a case which indeed I won't say it's my favorite, but I like it quite a lot. That's a case which was decided by the European Court of Human Rights in September last year, so 2022. And the reason I like the case is because it concerns not only the legal principle, of course the legal principle is concerned by the case, but also because it relates to those that are particularly weak in society. So let me tell you what the case was about, what the story was. In France, there's an institute, which is a kind of an expert institute, a leading institute worldwide, maybe the first funder, and definitely a very known research institute that researches the phenomenon of people with Down syndrome, trisomy, right? One could say disabled people. Now, as part of a campaign that took place in 2014 for the annual day for people with trisomy, the annual day for, I think it's for people with trisomy, on the 21st of March, this institute launched a promotional video in which I think over 10 children with Down syndrome were witnessing, were bearing witness, were testifying that their life with Down syndrome was really worth it to be lived. That even if it may be sometimes was a difficult life, that really they could be joyful and happy. That was I think a 2-minute commercial or infomercial, which was put together by this institute with a view of being aired on French public television. And indeed, it has been aired once or twice. And out of the, I would say, millions of television spectators in France, 2 complaints were filed before the French Audiovisual Board by 2 women who considered that displaying this video, this infomercial, was kind of questioning their fundamental right to abortion. And so 2 people filed a complaint before this board, and believe it or not, but within the month, the board had decided that this footage would no longer be aired on public television because it was not a message of general interest, and that it could be considered shocking or offensive. And that is in France, right? France is a champion of human rights. At least that's how they want to describe themselves. Now, so what happened is that this institute rightly went before the French courts and tribunals saying, hey, but we have freedom of expression in France. And what you are doing here is imposing some kind of censorship. Not only are you doing that, but you do not have any valid reasons to justify why you would not allow this clip to be aired on public television. And surprisingly, the courts and tribunals didn't find a violation of the foundation's right to freedom of expression. So that's where we, as international legal organization, stepped in. We got in touch with the foundation. We had the privilege of representing them before the European Court of Human Rights. And that's also where I started working on the case. Now, sadly, the European Court of Human Rights, for procedural reasons, did not rule on the case, dismissed the case, which is kind of a disappointment. But what is really rewarding regarding that case is that as an organization, we have been able to stand up not only to defend the right to freedom of expression of that institute, which is doing an absolutely great job, but we have also been there to be the voice of those people that have no voice, or at least that have difficulties of voicing their concerns. Those people that many don't want to see, and those are actually our brothers in mankind that are affected with Down syndrome.
Yes.
And so it was really rewarding, even if we didn't manage to bring the case to the good end because of procedural grounds. It was dismissed. It was very rewarding to be able to represent those that maybe are among the weakest one in our society, children with Down syndrome.
Yes. The video you are talking about is Dear Future Mom, yeah?
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's Dear Future Mom. And
so our listeners can look it up. Yes.
Exactly.
Yeah. Actually, you have been monitoring the life-related issues for a long period of time, and especially Belgian law on euthanasia and possible legalization of surrogacy. I think those are also huge themes and huge bioethical issues. As I recall, euthanasia is legal in Belgium, and it has killed 30,000 people since its legalization. Surrogacy is in a gray legal zone, so there are a lot of conferences which target interest groups, such as couples with same-sex attraction. I found information that the price for one child via surrogacy is from 80,000 to 150,000 euros. Can you brief us on the current situation regarding those two issues in Belgium?
Yes, sure. So let's maybe start with euthanasia, because you mentioned that first. So indeed, euthanasia is legal in Belgium. It has been legalized 20 years ago. It's a sad anniversary we have been celebrating in 2022.
Yes.
That was the 20th anniversary of the adoption of the Belgian euthanasia legislation. And at the time, in 2002, Belgium was only, I think, the second country worldwide that adopted euthanasia and that legalized euthanasia. And what is interesting is that when the law was adopted, there were some controversies, but politicians had said and promised that euthanasia would remain something absolutely exceptional. That there was a huge need to legalize euthanasia, but that euthanasia would remain absolutely exceptional. And what do we see after 20 years? We see that this promise has not at all been kept. At the contrary, so year after year, in 20 years of euthanasia, indeed the number of people that are euthanized on a yearly basis has always increased in 20 years, right? We are now close to 3,000 euthanasias a year, which amounts to, roughly spoken, 7 or 8 people being killed, basically, in Belgium through euthanasia a day, right?
Mamma mia.
That's not a small number. I think euthanasia was represented about somewhere between 1.5% or 2.5% of the total number of deaths last year, right?
Such a huge percentage.
That died in euthanasia. Yes, it's huge. It's a very important percentage. So contrary to what has been said, euthanasia did not remain exceptional in the facts. It's only increasing the number of people that see their life ended through euthanasia. But it's not only that, because what happened is that the law was amended, I think 3 times or 4 times over the course of those 20 years, and every amendment that was made went in the sense of broadening access to euthanasia. And it started in 2014 when the euthanasia legislation was adapted to allow minors to ask for euthanasia. Because another promise that had been made in 2002 was to say euthanasia would only be available for people that would be 18 plus of age, right? And 10 years later, the law is changed, and now euthanasia is possible in Belgium due to that change in the law. Euthanasia is possible also for minors, and there's no lower age limit, which means that children of the age of 5, 6, 7, 8 years could ask for their life to be ended by a doctor, which raises a lot of questions. And I won't go into the details, but what is interesting is that it was said 20 years ago that euthanasia would remain exceptional, and in the facts, the number increased, and the legal conditions, the qualifying conditions to access euthanasia have been broadened time after time. So euthanasia is accessible to minors. There is no right to euthanasia. It's harder for doctors to oppose. The next step will be that people with dementia will be allowed to be euthanized. And one can immediately ask the question, I mean, how can you take a sound decision when you're suffering from dementia, right?
Right, yeah.
But still, this is where we are heading, 20 years after the legalization. And it was promised that it would be exceptional, that it would be well controlled, that it would only take place under the supervision of well-trained and well-controlled doctors. 20 years later, I have to see that none of this was true. The only thing which is true, and that is sadly observed in all jurisdictions that legalize euthanasia or assisted suicide, the only thing which is true is that once you open the door to euthanasia and assisted suicide, there is actually no way to adequately control the practice. And inevitably, the door will only open more over time, right?
Yes.
And this has huge repercussions, not only from a legal point of view, but imagine also the pressure that is being placed on healthcare personnel on the one hand to collaborate to euthanasia, because euthanasia is more and more seen as an ordinary medical deed, which it is not, right? Imagine also the pressure that elderly people can feel. They are suffering, and they feel a pressure like maybe I'm becoming a burden for my neighbor, a burden for my grandchild that takes care of me. So maybe I should thinking of just going away through euthanasia. So those things do happen. So it's not only a legal concern I'm voicing here. It's really a shift in mentalities, which has dramatic effects for Belgian society. But that's it for euthanasia. And then very briefly on surrogacy, because you've said what you say is completely true. So there's a gray zone in Belgium. That means, in effect, surrogacy is tolerated, and to my knowledge, is not actively prosecuted. And what is dramatic here is that every surrogacy, if you think of it, implies that a woman is being used as an object, right?
Yes.
Or that children are being traded, basically. For a price, you've mentioned, I think, 80,000 to 150,000. That's well possible. And so what is dramatic is that surrogacy is not prosecuted while it goes against fundamental prohibitions on human trafficking and exploitations of human beings.
Yes.
So that is a drama, and I do hope once there will be an international ban on surrogacy. But we are not there yet, and it's important to continue to voice that concern.
Can we do something specific to stop such horrible practices? Because every person is a subject and the image of God. We cannot act like that.
Yes, absolutely. I think we can. The first thing is it's important to be aware, and therefore I'm very grateful that you allow me the opportunity to just say a couple of words in your podcast. Not at all am I a specialist. Not at all am I an expert. I would say I'm just trying to work on those subjects every once in a while, and if possible every day, to try to together with others, to resist those horrible practices. So the first point I would say is here, we have to be aware of what is happening. We need to know that surrogacy does exist, that euthanasia does exist, and that the reality is not is far from being as beautiful as how those things can be painted sometimes, can be presented by those that are the promoters of euthanasia or the promoters of surrogacy, right? So we have to raise awareness and know what exactly is going on, what exactly those practices represent, explain why there is always an exploitation of the women, an exploitation of the children involved, that it is, as you've said, human trafficking. So that is important, raise awareness. And then, well, I would answer from a religious point of view. It's important to recall and to continue to recall that we are made as human beings at the image and likelihood of God. And that therefore we should never be reduced to merely objects or treated as merely objects.
Yes.
From a philosophical point of view, I don't think you need a religious dimension necessarily, but it's important to recall the inherent dignity of every human being, as it is also recognized in many fundamental human rights treaties and instruments. Right? We have inherent dignity, and that is not tied to what we can do, or to our physical condition, or to our situation in life. Right? We have inherent dignity because of who we are. Yes. Because of our nature, and that is our nature of rational beings having a spiritual soul, which sets us apart from all other beings on the planet, and which allows us to do the greatest things. Sadly, also sometimes, which allows us to go against the greatest things we can do, and to choose other paths. Still, it's important to recall that we have an inherent dignity, and that because of that inherent dignity, there are fundamental rights, and we have to be treated in a certain way. Never should we be treated as objects. So should human beings be treated as objects? It's very important to recall that.
Yes, of course. I agree on that completely. Today, the freedom of thought, conscience, and religion is in danger. Because from the religious side of view, we need to confess and to live our religion, our faith. From the legal point of view, every person has the right to freedom of thought, conscience, and religion. But nowadays, that is in danger. So how can we help, for example, persecuted Christians, and what can we all do to protect them, but also to protect us, because we are also in danger, let's say?
That's a very good question. I'm tempted to say that as a Christian, the first thing I can do is to pray. I know this may seem a strange answer, or not. Maybe it's a straightforward answer. But
it's not. For me, it's not.
It's important to pray. We need to remember that we have to pray. Why? Because in the end, we are in the hands of God. God masters everything, and it would be foolish to pretend doing something without Him. At the contrary, if we do things with Him, basically in Him we can do everything, I would say. So praying is important. But of course, that's not sufficient. Or at least, we can also do something else by just knowing the situation, and by raising awareness, by informing about what is happening. You were talking about fundamental freedoms. Well, often they say that the best way to protect and promote freedom of religion is to exercise freedom of religion. So, not to remain silent when governments take policies which prevent us to go to church, for instance. Well, not to remain silent, to be able to denounce that, to be vocal about it, to write an opinion piece in your local newspaper, to write books as you did, to denounce certain practices. So not remaining silent is for sure already a way to protect fundamental freedoms of religion, thought, conscience, expression too. So that's one thing. And then specifically on persecuted Christians, what we try to do at ADF International is to raise awareness at the international level about specifically the situations of Christians in particular countries. And there's one case that comes to mind about which I would be glad to say a couple of words now, which is the case, I don't know if you're familiar. Did you hear about the case of Yahaya Sharif-Aminu already?
Yes, I think.
Does that sound familiar to you?
Yeah, it sounds.
So maybe it's I'll just summarize. But
yes, feel
Yahaya
free. Yes, of course.
Yes, it's a case we're currently involved in. So Yahaya Sharif-Aminu basically is a Nigerian musician. He's Muslim, belonging to a Sufi minority in Nigeria. Now, what happened to Yahaya, who's very young? Yahaya actually likes music, right? And he wrote lyrics of a song, which he then shared through a WhatsApp audio message, as he usually did, right? But what happened is that this song was about an imam, and some Muslims considered that this song was blasphemy because, according to their understanding of the lyrics, what Yahaya would have said is that this imam was greater than the Prophet Muhammad. So they considered this to be blasphemy. And you may know or not be familiar with the situation of blasphemy laws, but in Nigeria, blasphemy laws are in vigor. Basically, blasphemy laws are laws by which it's considered a criminal offense the fact of saying things which would be offensive towards a religious belief, right? Well, those blasphemy laws are applied very harshly in Nigeria. Not only are they unjust as such because they limit freedom of expression and freedom of religion, but in Nigeria they are applied very harshly, and Yahaya is one of the victims of those blasphemy laws. Because what happened? He was accused of blasphemy because of that song he wrote, and almost immediately after, a couple of days after, he was arrested by the police, taken to the police station, but taken to the police station, but before that his house was also burned down. A couple of days later he was brought before a Sharia court, where he was sentenced to death by hanging, simply for sharing a song through a WhatsApp audio message. And believe it or not, he was sentenced to death by hanging by a Sharia court, and he was not even represented or assisted by a lawyer. So Yahaya really had to fear for his life, although being Muslim, because in Nigeria some laws do exist which allow the government, which allow other Muslims to basically sentence to death someone which would have allegedly spoken in a disrespectful way or in an offensive way about their religious beliefs. And so he was sentenced to death, and I would say quite luckily we were brought in touch with him, with his legal team. And now, as ADF International, we are able to provide support to his case, which is being heard in appeal for the Supreme Court of Nigeria. And the reason I talk about this case is because I have been praying for this, but we're really trying to do what we can to raise attention to his situation, because it is so unjust, and it is emblematic of how unjust those blasphemy laws are. Actually, those laws should be abolished. And this is where this case is interesting. Not only are we trying to, in the first place, save Yahaya's life and protect his fundamental freedoms, but we do believe that if the Nigerian Supreme Court rules in favor of Yahaya, this would have also an effect on all other courts and a lot of other blasphemy laws in Nigeria. So defending Yahaya's case would be beneficial to others, and also to Christians who need to see their fundamental rights of expression, of freedom of religion, being safeguarded. And that's why we're working on this case. So what can we do? Well, as I've said, let's try to pray. Let's try to be aware ourselves also, not to remain silent when we know that unjust situations happen. So when Christians are persecuted, or Christian brothers around the world need to know that we stand at their side. And very concretely, for what concerns the Yahaya case, what we've done here, because obviously we're trying to help him, we're in touch with his legal team, so this all has a cost, right? So what we started on the occasion of Lent is a campaign called Free Yahaya. by which people can commit to pray, but also are invited to donate. We started a fundraiser actually. We need, I think, for this first part of the legal defense, we would need around 10,000 euros. We try to raise that right now in Lent. That's kind of a. So I would for sure invite all of you that would feel interest for this case to just go to our website adfinternational.org and go to the free Yahaya page and just read his story. Try to read it, to have it before you see him. See his image. We have, of course, you see his picture there, and pray for him.
Yes.
Try to pray for the work we try to do, for his lawyers, for the support we try to offer. And then if you feel compelled to, why not make a donation? I can assure you it's really money well spent. It's in good hands, and we really need it. So that is a very concrete way to answer your question, a way to help persecuted Christians today.
Yes, there is definitely hope, and that's the best possible way to conclude this serious part of our conversation.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
No, you're right. There is hope. And I must say, I get to know and to see a lot of people throughout the work I do. I myself work with the European institutions, but I also travel every once in a while, and I meet really fabulous people, Christians, but also not Christians, that really are trying to defend justice. And so what I would say is, well, we don't necessarily always have to do great things. We just have to try to do our best, what we can here and now. We've said, as Christians, we do believe that many things are in God's hand. If there is hope, as a Christian, it is because we know that Christ already won, right?
Yes.
That there is still, he already showed us the path to follow. That being said, it's sometimes hard. It's a challenge to defend truth, whether it's in important things, like I've mentioned, cases literally about life and death, or just with our colleagues, with our family, with our friends. We're called to defend truth, and sometimes it's difficult. About a couple of topics we've discussed in this podcast. Sometimes it's even difficult to discuss with colleagues because they consider that you are from another age, or you go against the general sense in which society is evolving. So defending truth is challenging, but I would also say it's very rewarding, because defending truth ultimately is always doing something good. When someone speaks the truth, someone tries to advocate for the truth and the truth to be defended, he's doing something good. And even regardless of the results, there is some inherent value in that. So I say, and I meet a lot of people, Christians or not, that want to still defend truth nowadays, and that gives me a lot of hope.
I couldn't agree more. Yeah, that's beautiful. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes.
To conclude the conversation, I have some rapid-fire questions for you. To conclude in a little bit relaxed manner. Are you in?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. Please.
Okay. So let's start. Salty food or sugary food?
That's a difficult one. I'll just say this. For breakfast, definitely sugary. For dinner, rather salty. That's I know that's a lawyer's answer, right?
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah, I'm a big foodie. I eat everything, but sweets are sweets, so maybe sweets, yeah. So, Flemish stew or mussels? What do you choose?
Oh, Flemish stew.
Flemish stew, oh,
yes.
Okay.
I come from Flanders, and absolutely. That's what I used to, and I still ask my lovely wife to prepare me for my birthday. So, if once you're around in Belgium, let me know, and we'll have Flemish stew together. Excellent.
I will send a message. Waffles or chocolate?
Sorry, I didn't understand the first part. You said chocolate?
Chocolate or waffles?
Oh.
Belgian.
Again, a difficult one. No, I sell chocolate.
Chocolate, yeah. Okay. Sun or rain?
No, sun, definitely.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm in need of sun. If you have some in Croatia, please feel free to send it over here.
Yeah, it's a spring, maybe it will be better. Yeah.
Well, I had the pleasure of going to Zagreb in March 2022.
Uh-huh.
And it was like, I think we had 20, 23, 24, 25 degrees and full sun for 2 days. So I really enjoyed being there.
Yeah, it is really excellent time, because spring in Croatia, particularly in Zagreb, is very beautiful. Everything is colorful, and it's really lovely. Yeah.
And you have such a beautiful nature there too.
Yeah. We have, yeah. Seaside or mountain?
Seaside.
Seaside,
Yes,
okay.
seaside.
Lukaku
My father
or...
was in the Navy.
Ah, okay. So I also like more seaside. Lukaku or De Bruyne?
Joker. I'll take them both in my team.
Ah, yes.
Because they play at different positions, right?
Yeah, there are different positions.
One would
Yeah.
be in the middle of the pitch, and the other one would be on the
attack.
So I'll
Yeah.
take them both.
Okay, great. My hobby is, or my hobbies are.
Oh, definitely cycling.
Mm-hmm.
Cycling. I'm a big cycling fan. I like to cycling and also watching cycling races or following cycling. That's for sure. And then I have quite of an interest in documentaries. I like to watch documentaries about history, especially the period following the Second World War.
Second World War area. Okay, great. My favorite spot in Belgium is place.
Home.
Spot or place?
I like to be home.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, my favorite space is home because my children are there and my lovely wife.
Oh, that's so sweet. Great. As a tourist, I would buy this souvenir in Belgium. What would you buy as a souvenir?
Well, the problem is if I say chocolate or beer,
Mm-hmm.
in the end it won't be a souvenir anymore because you will either eat or drink it.
Yeah.
Right? So maybe what could be an option is, you know, the atomium. Have you ever heard of it?
Yes.
It's,
Mm-hmm.
It was the symbol of the Universal Exposition we had in Belgium in 1958. It's actually the crystal of iron or something like that, and consists of 9 globes which are related
Mm-hmm.
in kind of a cube. It's approximately 60 or 70 meters high
Mm-hmm.
as a monument in Belgium. Maybe having a miniature of that and then have it on your desk somewhere. I mean, could be a nice souvenir of a trip to Belgium.
Yes, to remember the time spent there. Yeah.
I could also have said the rocket of Tintin.
Uh-huh. Okay. Yeah. Great. That was excellent. Thank you very much,
Well,
Jean-Paul.
thank you very much, Brenda.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for your time and for the questions. I hope you'll be able to. I hope we'll be able to meet.
Yes, I also.
Hope it will be nice.
Yes, for some opportunity, or in Belgium or in Croatia. Let's see, maybe something come up. So, yeah.
Absolutely, let me know. Let me know. And thank you for this podcast. I think it's a nice initiative.
Thank you very much. I think we should use our talents. So you use your talents. So I just say I will also use my talents. So that's the point.
No doubt. Yeah. Thank you for that.
Yeah. Thank you, and have a nice rest of the day.
Yes, likewise. Have a nice rest of the day, Branka.
Thank you. Bye.